My niece turned into a Karen, so I publicly humiliate her. I manage a chain of restaurants, and I'm generally doing work in one or the other. Once again, I'm sitting in my favorite booth that overlooks the entire restaurant when I see a familiar face walk in. It was my niece, and she had some friends with her. It must have been one of her girls' nights out. We were rather crowded, and there was a bit of a wait on tables. I went back to eating and doing the end-of-month paperwork, and I heard my niece say rather loudly, "You will seat me now. Do you know who my uncle is? I can have you fired just like that." And Tammy, the hostess, tried telling her there were no seats, but my niece wanted nothing to do with that. She said, "My uncle practically owns this place, Mr. H. You know who that is, right?" Tammy nodded her head. "Yeah, I know who he is. I see him in here all the time." And my niece said, "Well then, you know I could have your job just like that. All I have to do is make one phone call and you are gone, missy." I was livid. My niece was using my name to get a free ride, something that I frown on. I even look down on nepotism. I got up, walked up behind her as she continued her rant of how she deserves to be seated. Tammy smiled as I spoke up. "Hello, Lissa, nice to see you." "Oh, hi, Uncle," she said sweetly. "I was just explaining how I know you and that you're my uncle." "You're using my name to get a free meal and I don't appreciate it. These people, unlike you, work for a living, and I know your father is going to be very disappointed when I call him and tell him how you're treating these people." "But Uncle, she was being really snotty to me." "Lissa, don't you dare lie to me. Tammy was being nothing but sweet and pleasant, so don't you even dare try it." Lissa squealed out, "But Uncle…" "But nothing. I don't want you trying to be a mooch. I don't approve it and your father sure wouldn't." I apologized to her friends and told them they'd have to vacate the restaurant now. "Tammy, you see Lissa in there? You have the right to throw her out and I'll contact the managers of the other 2 restaurants not to seat you if they hear you drop my name, or give any free meals. Lissa, I'm so disappointed in your behavior right now. Just go." Lissa stomped off with her friends, screaming she was going to tell her daddy. "No, you won't, because your dad will side with me. I know he doesn't promote this kind of attitude, and I know he didn't raise you this way. Now go." It's been several years since then. She still doesn't talk to me. Her dad apologized for her behavior. Why, I don't know. It's not his fault. He's a good man and tells me he didn't raise her to be like that. But it's okay, he made her get a job. Working for me. Yes, I made her work as a dishwasher and said my name better not drift out of her mouth to gain favoritism with the others. I think she's still ticked off at me. But oh well, I still have the respect of my employees, and that's what counts. Late update. My niece Lissa called me today out of the blue. It was a bit awkward for her at first, but we talked. She said she was sorry and has wanted to apologize for the longest time. Just didn't know how. I told her all she had to do was call, say she was sorry, and I would have forgiven her. We caught up and she told me what she had been up to. I told her I knew already I'd been talking to her dad and mum. Just because I was upset didn't mean I didn't care. She said she knows it's no excuse for her behavior, but she was just trying to impress her friends. I told Lissa I do understand, we do stupid things. She invited me to her wedding, and I invited Lissa to dinner with her fiancé on Saturday. And yes, this time dinner really will be on me. I think the author might have at least in part averted a Karen. Then again, it might be unfair to put her behavior down to pure Karenness when it sounds more like she was just being a pure unfiltered teenage brat. So I'm not sure whether it was just her growing out of it all or the uncle and father's duo course correction, or a little bit of each. I will say that as far as punishments go, getting a dishwasher job is probably one of the more humbling ones if you have airs and graces and like to throw your name around to get special treatment. If only we could indenture more Karens into manual labor for their infractions, we could probably clean up a lot of the awful behavior we hear about here on the channel. Just a thought. Oh, who am I kidding? Most of them would be the worst co-workers in the world and a lot more trouble than they are worth as employees. I planted over 5,000 dandelion weeds in my neighbor's garden. Here's some backstory. I have a 4-year-old cocker spaniel named Charlie, and he likes to poop. I let him out in front of my garden every morning for his toilet routine, same in the evening. We don't have a boundary fence on where my garden and my neighbor's start, besides a row of bushes. Saying this, Charlie hasn't ever crossed or pooped past these bushes. Now, every week I collect up said poop before it turns into a disturbing amount. I've been doing this for the past 4 years to keep my front garden looking good and not smelly. He's a Cocker Spaniel. He isn't taking colossal craps. It's also a fairly big garden, so there aren't huge piles everywhere. The dog tends to spread it out to mark his territory. You'd have to physically search for it to find it. Regards to not picking it up instantly, unlike some, when my dog needs to go, he's going to go. Usually he has a final number 2 before bed around 11 p.m. Charlie is a trained hunting dog, not some common house pet. He comes shooting and camping with me every weekend, and regards to walks, he gets one early morning and a run on the evening. He's a very well-trained dog. One day I came home from work to find that my neighbors weren't happy that there was dog doo-doo in my front garden. I instantly went to collect up what was there. There wasn't much, and it was nowhere near the boundary of where our gardens met. Fast forward a week, my neighbor again complained about it being in my garden. However, this time, they threatened to hurt my dog if he continued to do that in my garden. This time, I wasn't so nice about it, and stated that it's my garden and my dog can do as he pleases. Now I know dog do can be annoying, but when it's not in your garden and there's no smell due to decent airflow and an open front garden, is it really justified to go threatening a man's dog over some number 2? Anyway, after months of this going with petty things and shade being thrown at me every day about having a dog, I decided to declare war on my neighbors. Now, I know these people pretty well. They've just moved in and we let them use our Wi-Fi for a couple of months until they got theirs sorted. I picked up a few things about them, and one was how OCD they were. They cut their back garden every week and painted the entire bottom layer of the house to match their fence. This was all the fuel I needed to exact my revenge. My first step was to start off small. I knew they liked things to match, so I painted my fence gate bright pink instead of matching it with my fence. This was my first small victory. They hated it so much they begged me to correct the color. So I did. I figured if peace was an option, it was worthwhile. Then began the hate again. I had to come up with something so evil and yet genius that it couldn't be traced back to me. This is when I planted over 5,000 dandelion seeds in their front and back gardens. I figured I was in this for the long game. I did this under the cover of night and made sure to plant them in places not easily mowed. Fast forward 3 months and their garden was covered in weeds. They grew through all the slabbing and were patched all over the garden. It took them 3 days to clear the weeds and about $100 of weed killer. Long story short, jerk neighbor threatens to hurt my dogs. I plant 5,000 weeds in their garden. Am I the jerk? Yeah, if you threaten animals, honestly, most of the internet will agree that you had whatever punishment you got coming to you. These guys must have so little going on in their lives to get this worked up about some tiny Cocker Spaniel doo-doo in the adjacent yard. Also, I feel like the author kind of glosses over how they just casually planted several thousand weeds in their neighbor's yard without them noticing. That's a covert operation that got way too little detail. How long and painstaking a process was that? I know that weeds grow like weeds, and they're probably fairly easy to plant, but there's still a lot of coverage that you'll need to have gone in for maximum destruction, if nothing else. How did these not get caught in the lawnmower? This is a very involved job, and I need to know more, damn it. She put ramen in his coat pocket. My sister, 35, and her new boyfriend of 30, who'd only been dating for a month before quarantine, are at my mum's house during the pandemic. My mum is getting pretty frustrated because her youngest, me, has left the nest and she likes having the house to herself. My sister's boyfriend is gross. He doesn't wash his hands, he leaves mystery stains all over the carpets and floors, he has some kind of infection or open wound on his wrist that he doesn't cover or clean, he doesn't shower, and he doesn't clear his plates before putting them in the sink with no garbage disposal. With all of his hygiene issues, he'll still do things like reach into a new bag of bread that my mum bought without washing his hands, having the open wound, and he'd just gotten back from the hospital for the 3rd time in 2 days because of his wound. My mum's about to lose her mind being there with them. Going back to the dishes thing though, he doesn't clear his dishes and she's told them several times to clear off your plates or do your own dishes. He doesn't do either. After a week of those soggy noodles sitting in a bowl in the sink, my mum had had enough. His coat was sitting on the chair in the kitchen, so she took the ramen out of the bowl and stuck it in his coat pocket. Then she washed all of the dishes in the sink. He grabbed his coat a bit later to leave and go to a friend's house, probably to smoke weed with a bunch of friends during the pandemic, and she smiled and waved him out the door. Crikey, what happened with this guy? Did his actual mum get sick of looking after him and kick him out? That or his college dorm? Look, pal, I understand that we're a juvenilized generation, but 30 is taking the whole man-child who can't cook or clean act just a little bit too far. And what is your sister doing with this green herb medicating set of open, unwashed sores? Does this guy have the biggest eggplant in the world? Because it doesn't sound like he's got much going for him in the way of work. Look, this is a whole lot of judgment coming from me, and we don't know what's going on in this man's life to make him like that, but my dude, you have to at least make an effort if you don't want to get kicked out of yet another place. I say yet another because I'm nearly certain this won't be the first or even the second place he's got the boot from. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Refund my worn-out underwear or I'll sue you. A few years ago, I was the manager at a store for a company that specialized in as-seen-on-TV products. As you can imagine, it was a pretty fun job. I was allowed, even encouraged, to try out all the products so we could promote them better. The downside, however, was some of the interesting customers that wanted refunds for the weirdest things. One rather slow day, I'd just finished restocking the shelves when a customer came storming into the store. The look on his face was comparable to the grumpy cat, if it was human. I greeted him. "Anything I can give you a hand with, sir?" "These are defective. I want a refund." He put a plastic bag down on the desk and took out a very ratty-looking pair of Tommy Copper boxer briefs. For a bit of context, the company return policy was basically exchange or store credit with a few refund exceptions based on manufacturer's guarantees. Any clothing items were strictly final sale due to hygienic reasons, but we would occasionally allow exchanges for defects within a certain time period. The policy was always printed out on the receipt, and we had an official 8x10 copy from head office with the heading Return Policy set up in plain sight next to the register. So, to humor him, I said, "Can I see your receipt?" He handed it to me, still scowling. I looked at the purchase date and saw that the purchase had been a bit over 5 months ago. It was also stamped Final Sale in red ink. "Sorry boss, it looks like this was purchased over 5 months ago. Not only that, this item is final sale as it says right here." I grabbed a highlighter and traced over the bold Final Sale stamp. "No, that's bullcrap. This is your product, so this is your responsibility." "I'm afraid not, boss. Unfortunately, we're not the manufacturer, just the retailer. And I'm afraid this isn't a defect, it's wear and tear." "Get me your manager." I pointed to the name tag on my lanyard. "I am the manager, sir, and I'm sorry, but that's our company policy." "Bullcrap. I could sue you for this. If there was such a policy, it has to be legally in writing for customers to see." I was losing my patience at this point. "It is, sir. Here." I highlighted it on his receipt again, and here, pointing to the aforementioned sign in front of his face. I watched his face get red as he looked from his receipt to the sign and back. "Well, you'll be hearing from my lawyer." He grabbed his item and receipt, turned on his heel, and stormed out. "Okay now, take care. Have a great day." I watched his head sink into his shoulders as he stomped out the door. I enjoyed it immensely. Does that make me a jerk? "And we never heard from him again," is what I wanted to read the author say next, but you never can tell with some of these people. There is, however, one detail here that's driving me a bit nuts. These undies of Tommy Copper fame are that worn down after 5 months? I don't know the brand and their respective quality, but either these are the worst undies of all time, or this gentleman was wearing them night and day for the entire period, while doing high-friction activities like cycling, back-to-back marathons, and occasionally taking them for a swim in a chlorinated pool to wash them out. As a man who's been known to wear down the occasional pair of Dax, let me tell you that it takes at least a year of normal wear and tear in most cases to get to the stage where you can see the elastic. I don't think this gentleman got his refund. Am I the jerk for showing my missing eye to the new teacher after he told me my bangs were disrespectful? I had an accident when I was a baby, and I lost my left eye. I don't have an eye socket I could put a fake eye in, it's just normal skin and some scars on a big patch of my face. They reconstructed my face with a later surgery this way. The right side and the bottom half of my face is completely normal. I have big side bangs that hide the left side of my face so I don't freak anyone out, and I don't get weird looks. I've been going to the same school since I was 5, so the teachers and the kids know about it. We got a new teacher this week. He started by asking us to go around and introduce ourselves. When it got to me, he was rude and asked me, "Do your parents know you come to school looking like this? It's extremely disrespectful. Fix your bangs. I want to see your face." So I obeyed and tucked my bangs behind my ear, showing the left side of my face. He gasped, his face turned red, my classmates laughed, and he told me that I could let my bangs down. Later that day, my head teacher came to scold me. She told me I was wrong to shock the new teacher and I should have just told him about it. Did I do anything wrong? I just obeyed his orders. It's not my fault he ended up not wanting to look at my face. Am I the jerk? Update: my mum went in to talk to the head teacher. It turned out that the new teacher made it sound like I was playing a prank on him, trying to deliberately shock him and make fun of him in front of the class. 3 of my classmates had to be called in to confirm my part of the story. The head teacher apologized, called it an unfortunate misunderstanding, and told us she'll clear it up with the new teacher. I don't have to worry about it. I don't believe it was just a misunderstanding. It sounds like the new teacher deliberately lied, but we can't do anything about that. Yeah, this guy bought it on himself. Even if she was doing this for the sick prank bragging rights on the replacement teacher, the way he was talking to her about her appearance was pretty unacceptable. Saying to a kid that their parents should be ashamed of the way they present themselves is, to say the least, a very strong start. Even if it was against school dress code and our protagonist wasn't doing it for their own and everyone's comfort, you can cover yourself by phrasing these things as a question. And if you still want to be an authoritative jerk, you can even say, "Is there a reason your hair is covering your face?" You can still covet your small amount of power as well as getting a verbal reason why, rather than a shock and losing your precious authority. Here's hoping he doesn't target our author going forward. Am I the jerk for not saying anything when someone called me spoiled and privileged? My husband's best friend, Nate, got a new girlfriend, Camilla, about half a year ago. She moved to our city recently, so she doesn't really have any friends here, but she and I hung out a couple of times and started to get friendly. For context, we're all in our 20s, my husband and I both have nice jobs, we own a small flat and play tennis as a hobby. Camilla thinks it's a rich people sport. And we regularly travel by finding €10 plane tickets and staying at cheap hostels for 3 nights at a time. Now, to the point, my husband and I were hosting a little get-together. Nate, Camilla, and a few of our other friends were invited. At one point, the conversation went to topics like the current level of inflation, how the lockdown affected people and jobs, the housing market, among other things. And I had something to say too, agreeing with Camilla. Camilla cut me off and said something like, "Well, no offense, but you're way too much of a spoiled, privileged girl to understand things like this. You'd need a tragedy or two in your life to understand struggle. I love you, but you've never experienced any hardship in your life." The room went silent and nobody said anything. After some awkward silence, I stood up and said, "Well, is anyone hungry? Shall we eat?" And we never went back to that topic. Camilla messaged me the next day asking me how I could do this to her. Nate told her afterwards that I was raised by a very hostile father and that I fell ill as a teenager, spending months in hospital and had to have multiple life-saving surgeries, and it took me a month to learn how to walk again. Camilla is mad at me for not telling these very personal things to her before and making her look terrible to Nate's friends. She said that even correcting her at the party would have been better because then she could have apologized to me in front of everyone. But I took that chance away from her and now she'll never make friends. Honestly, this whole thing is ridiculous and I don't really think I'm the jerk, but it never hurts to ask. Maybe I should have gently corrected her after she said that. Am I the jerk? Nope, me thinks she would have looked like just as much of a jerk, if not more, if you'd called her out on all these things and undercut her in the argument. Here's an idea, Camilla. How about we just don't assume these things about people and insult them to their faces in public settings? I imagine among all my friends, there are probably quite a few stories that they would rather keep to themselves or their therapists. And if they ever choose to share with me, great. If not, in the words of Roy Kent, that's none of my frickin' business. The fact that she thinks this has blown all of her chances of ever making friends speaks volumes of her social skills. It's easy to meet people. If your spouse's friends were your only shot at making people hang around you, What are you doing wrong that no one else wants to? When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Or if you want to check out some great music, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot. Everything linked in the description.